Hello, my devious gargoyles and ghouls, and welcome to the spooky boo. Ouch. Sorry about that. I found the squidling on the ground and decided, like all who encounter such mercenaries, to put it on my head. And I have now found myself in the warm palms of Cthulu Spider, for the great old ones rotting in their cribs, waiting for their awakening, to find their creator and cancel him on Twitter. Boo! He kind of looks like Mark Zuckerberg. He isn't hurting anybody, so it's fine, Dad. I love Halloween, man. And I'm so happy this might be the only video I make on it because everything is bad. Now, we're gaming. My non-Halloween video is on the back burner. It'll come out in like 7 years. I'm a bit busy. I didn't really think I'd post anything for Halloween. In fact, right after I made that shit post, I got my 4th COVID contraction. And like every time I get that shit, I get a weird amnesia. I did buy a pumpkin, and that's all I need. It's hard to know what to make a video on, but as I was jamming out on a break, it stared me straight in the face. With dead, soulless eyes, once a person, but left behind a corpse. When I was born, grandmama could see it. Every year or so, hip-hop gets this big release that kind of turns heads. Whether it's the Forever Story, Scaring the Hoes, or Cornucopia, there's some large conceptual album that comes out and everyone talks about. This year, the hip-hop group Clipse released their newest album, Let God Sort 'Em Out. I'm gonna be honest, I've never heard of them. I remember in February when Drake released that album with Party Next Door and everyone was all, man, Party Next Door used to be so good. He really fell off. And I was standing in the corner trying not to fall for this Chris O'Neal-ass bit. You made this guy up. Clips are from the Bling era in the 2000s. They are Malice and Pusha T. And for Pharrell Williams sometimes for some reason.
I'm trying to show y'all who the fuck I am. The Jews is flirting, be damned if I'm hurt. Doing a $1.6 with me in the cockpit. Grinding, cousin, I got for a duck just as heavy as my name.
You know, I'm gonna be honest with you. This song sucks. I really came into hip-hop very late, as in 2020. I didn't listen to trap at its peak or even the traditional stuff my brother and sister played, especially not the Bling era. I was in kindergarten when it ended. Anyway, the album exploded this year, and while it did fade out from the mainstream, it'll probably appear on most of the best lists.
So be it, so be it.
I am utterly fascinated by this album, by the direction, the gall of it, and the entirety of itself. I think I learned that if your album art is slightly cropped, it gets better, ironically. Not all the time, especially if it's a shit cover, cough cough the Strokes, and not every cover needs to be cut off. That said, if you cut off a portion of your cover, it looks. The cartoon skeleton in pieces, the skull and crossbones, and the layer of noise over it, adding this texture of sand. The contrast between the pinker old pieces, doused in rainbow noise, and the fresh white bone taken by the gloves, zoomed in like a recording of an autopsy, and that's not even getting to the meat and bones, the sound. This album is processed to sound like death. Or at least, it's highly horror-coded.
Turn niggas statistics, I'm so sadistic, so religious, that's so malicious.
And especially in the lyrics. Let God Sort 'Em Out is a vindictive title. The album's lyrics focus a lot on the Bling-era ideal of getting riches to flex, the rags to riches story by confronting the narrators, as in, oh, you have all that shit? Congratulations, now you've lost it. What another waste that was. It really digs into that desire for jewelry and treasures, dug up to show off, and all amounts to nothing. I don't think the vaguely vintage sound in the mixing, especially in So Be It, is unintentional.
Heavy, circle back and come and get this Kelly. And your ears too, if you want a blue like belly.
You buy jewelry to show off instead of as gifts. You hoard money to show off instead of reimbursing them into your community. The motif of repeats through the album over and over again because the confrontation stabs right into the soul of Bling-era hip-hop. Unlike Puffy, Kanye, or Jay-Z, that's not a good roster for a genre, oh my god, Clipse mostly petered out into the middle tier, and the return is entirely confrontational and sneering. evil, if that best describes it.
Work niggas, you hear me loud and clear. Get these 5,500 to host the niggas out of here.
The album is malicious and laughs at the pain and downfall of other rappers who rose to the top and lost it all under the guise of you had it coming the whole time.
The devil's tapping on shoulders. He's trying to get to know you. Beat the system with chains and whips.
This is culturally inappropriate.
So Be It has this pretty harsh kick bass with this desert instrumental. Malice raps about the empty thrill in collecting and disposing.
I got 8 of them call me Andretti. If I'm not in the telly selling the Yeti, then I'm twirling your bitch like she in spaghetti.
Being this danger that lurks and remains untouchable. Pusha T raps about rappers who are all talk, who try to connect with others for profit, but end up with nothing as they discard their same allies.
Blow money, you owe money, we ain't balanced, you ain't believe. God did, you ain't Khaled, y'all tweet, bird talk, we all parrots. Lone Star, cross the border, we like Dallas.
As they face the same parasitic treatment. If this wasn't a Halloween video, I would probably do that to the song, or the track POV with Tyler the Creator, or the number of hilarious songs with Pharrell, who sounds like Mickey Mouse.
Alright, you'll be sleeping with the fishies.
Fishies? Sounds like he's about to sell out.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
I mean, the writing is right, but
Went from heaters up to fevers up. Bitches in the back, the seat is up.
no, I can't. I only hear this soft, bubbly voice between Malice's low growl and Pusha's demonic sneer. And then there's Richard Carpenter in the center playing the fucking piano. The stereotype of ancient ruins, particularly the fake sound of Egypt, is what this album sounds like. It's fake. It's the Hollywood mirage of exploring an old culture and hoarding their treasures for yourself because their culture can't handle it. It sounds like Dead Time. The album cover depicts this white glove picking at the sandy, decrepit corpse and harvesting their bones. The mixing is thick and wide with all these echoes.
I'm not a tough guy, I'm a flower boy, them beats get you stung. Oh, nah, nah, nah.
These stretched synths acting like violins. There's one song that has latched onto my head and gotten stuck in my mind over and over again. I did a video on Mirror Shades Parts 2, which has since gotten a Part 1.
Maybe if you tickle up the box, tickle him and take another little tip at the top. Or maybe not, Spider got it.
It's pretty good. And I forgot to add lyrics because I got lazy. That was a fun song, but I think to better explain this particular song, I want to run some history. Because while Chains and Whips is a phenomenal dissection of the tropes in bling era hip-hop, especially in this darker and more contradictional era, do I have to? No, but I will because I like writing words. Bling era hip-hop came as the counterculture to G-funk and gangster rap, but inherited the competitive boast of the genre, and the boasting of luxury and wealth to show off your rags to riches narrative. You surround yourself with dozens of men, women, and puffy for some reason. In the 2000s, it turned into the golf shirt era with Ja Rule, 50 Cent, Nelly, and Chameleonaire. These guys were all about their jewelry and chains, their sports cars, their mansions. It was a display of making it, getting out of the slums into the white-approved mansionette. The previous eras of hip-hop were dark and serious, about the struggles of real people surviving their darkest days, or the ordinary existence of normal people. Which was a twist on the golden era hip-hop, which were about stories of getting jumped, breaking into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or getting the girl, all of which are equally valuable. Which came from the post-disco hip-hop in the 70s about putting your hands up and
Legend of Zelda, and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad.
And as the 2000s got harder for people, the bling era got a lot less popular. Chameleonaire was out. Millennial Grey was in. Hip-hop in the 2010s took inspiration from the more serious rappers like Nas and Tupac. They focused on the more down-to-earth struggle of people getting out of the violence in their community, being continually brought down by broader white culture, and the problems with dealing with a community fraught with injustice. The trap era became moodier and focused on simpler beats with a more beat-down mood, lyrics of drug use, heartbreak, and mental illness instead of just the struggle or the climb. The main spirit of hip-hop remained in the middle tier. Genesis Owusu, Little Sims, Vince Staples, and Backwash focused on that mixture of personal stories and broader societal cruelty. The 80s neoliberal paradigm promised black men an escape out of systemic racism through economic incentives. The individualist story seems more of a religious promise to escape systemic abuse by being the odd one out, but it was always a lie. Malice and Pusha T are not rappers I'm super familiar with. I heard of them, Malice has almost no discography. They changed their name to No Malice, which I remember happening, but I still don't know what they did with that. They were both featured on Jesus is King. I think that's where I learned of Malice. Sorry, No Malice. Pretty sure I've heard No Malice somewhere, but I have heard of Pusha T. That's right, don't like one.
Three hoes, trifecta, dope money, hope money.
I was in the car of someone who played it. Can't wait to forget that song. No, it's from the big one.
Let's have a heart-to-heart about your pride. Even though you're multi, I see that your soul don't look alive.
We will never escape this. However, I think it's the tone in T's voice that kinda threw people off. Pusha T does a fucking voice of judgment. There were some criticisms thrown towards the return of Clipse, specifically with how old they are and how they kind of block some of the newer artists to hip-hop that have broken through. Hip-hop is definitely more generous to their older figures than most genres. Do Clipse block newer artists? Not really. The specific block of hip-hop they got popular in isn't the same one that Glorilla, Laylo, or Doja Cat occupy. Hell, even the conscious hip-hop side that Clipping and Little Sims occupied wasn't really impeded. I think it's a good point to make because Clipse are very old and will naturally take up space as legacy acts. If they just released a legacy album and got rewarded for it like Gaga did with Mayhem, I might be looking at this project a little differently. Chains and Whips has a hard thud kick drum slamming over a distorted string or synth over a pretty groovy bass.
This is culturally inappropriate.
I like the video having both Malice and Pusha T nodding to the progression. There's this sped up and distorted string or brass instrument which repeats to the beat. Honestly, it sounds like a death rattle repeating in the main verses. Some kind of hideous flute playing a pan flute to the sound of Malice and Pusha T beating the shit out of you. The distorted sample plays like a lullaby, where once the bling era hedonistically swam through riches, the older figures have since turned on that paradigm. The lyrics speak of a more accusatory line. The narrator confronts, probably you, about the desire for money and riches.
Choke my neck, nigga, and ice my bitch. Beat the system with chains and whips.
Almost like an eye roll, they refract the intention with chains and whips. The bling era's icon was the chain, a sign of reclaimed status and luxury. A more symbolic eye could see it as a different kind of chain. BDSM first. Pusha T does both the chorus and verse, and he fucking kills at them. He just says these fucking golden lines like he was born to play this role. I can't really pick any highlights without accidentally playing the entire song, so...
You run from the spirit of repossession. Too much enamel covers your necklace. I buy bitches, you buy them sections. You buy watches, I buy collections.
I almost can't even dissect that entire... Wow. Pusha T accuses this person, who might be himself, this could be self-accusatory, of the desire to hoard. That to lose possession is to lose power. Their necklace is covered in gloss to bring out its shine so that it's seen. It really is there to hide the pity party that this person trapped himself in, and being this probably toxic additive that brings out shine, but also poisons. Pusha T gets himself women while this person buys for them, gives them status and nothing more.
You buy watches, I buy collections.
T places himself as the collector, as this grim reaper for those rappers, buying off their hordes of collection that becomes worthless. To this person, they buy a watch for millions until it runs out of value. They buy a watch for millions until it runs out of value. At which point Pusha T reaps their trash into collections, histories, and trajectories of this possession. Because this person is miserable and worthless, and their habits become a projection.
Misery's fueling your aggression. Jealousy's turned into obsession.
The desire to be the person they see in their lives all figured out, being lulled into the trap of earning and gathering without seeing the insecurity in their own copycat behavior. The big line of this song, of this verse, is,
I will close your heaven for the hell of it.
Ignoring the legendary wordplay, T falls into this role of closing this paradise, this escape for this person, merely because he can. Because he wants to see them suffer and struggle, to see them find this way forward without a shortcut. Really? Or because they like to see their nemesis fall into ruin after indulging in stuff. There's also the kind of note in the line, I will close your heaven for the hell of it. Your heaven is someone else's hell, etc. They watch this person, another rapper, presumably, fall out of the way.
You think it'd be valor amongst veterans? I'm watching your fame escape relevance. We all in a room, but here's the elephant.
This person becomes the talking point of their fall, that despite making it, being the ones to hold up the chain and boast with the sports cars, mansions, and women, they will lose it and be known more for their fall rather than their rise, because they were only in it for the thrill. They're remembered for the loss of the excitement. It's funny because while MC Hammer gets this stereotype, mostly because he hired people close to him and just ran out of money because he was a figure of a very small niche of pop rap, really the people Pusha T refers to is the other rappers in the bling era who stomped in, tried to gamble, cashed out, and hid away. The true 1%, the Drakes, the Snoop Dogg's, Steve Harvey's, that one guy from Fox News, who relish in wealth and stay away from their culture to contrast themselves as the good ones. Pusha T watched this person rot and fall like a demon, cackling in the corner as karma fractures them bit by bit.
It don't take much to put two and two.
Malice raps the second verse. The second verse is much shorter and more concise, but it holds more weight being from a guy nicknamed Malice. He mentions John 10:10.
John 10:10, that's my usual.
I don't have a Bible, so I looked it up. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. This is from the New Testament, not the boring Old Testament or the eldritch older testaments. God claims they have arrived to give people a sense of faith, to allow them to exist, as the thief who exists to steal ruins their community and creates an atmosphere of distrust, which God relinquishes by providing a key, as the nihilistic non-existence creates the thief. Malice recites it because he describes himself in the verse as godly. But he is not acting very godly here. He talks like a vengeful poltergeist. He also understands that the same Christians that recite this poetry indulge themselves in riches. A thief that steals from the rich to give to the poor is still a thief. God, in this context, gives a reason to live that takes from the thief. Malice is not the thief. His hatred for this person is not the same as the contempt this vague figure has for their people.
Your lucky streak is now losing you. Money's dried up like a cuticle. You're gasping for air now, it's beautiful.
A cuticle is a term for the epidermis of a plant or hair follicle. It's an external layer, and like old skin turning crusty and wrinkled, money has folded and become aged and frail. They have lived in luck and selfishness at the aid, not of a god, but of a devil. I will address the chorus, I'm saving it. They believe it's divine, but it is merely the temptation, the fruit the snake lures Adam and Eve with. They see a paradise, but only receive divine torture. They spent their time sucking up the air other people are desperate for, and now that they're down in that position, the karma leaves Malice with nothing but laughter. Malice watches this tragedy with glee, because they have fallen for the trap, warned of it, but still molten melt into the demon that lured them to spread temptation and evil. They wither away as punishment for sin. Interestingly, this song is credited to Malice, Pusha, and Pharrell. If I'm going to be honest, I thought Pusha T did the verses and Malice did the chorus because they both sound the same on the song. Pharrell sings the post-chorus in this Greek chorus style, if you will, which I suspected, but I don't know why he sounds properly harmonial here, where on the rest of the album he sounds like me. Not to take away from the line, which is raw and intense. It gives away that this person, trapped in the riches, were not led on by a divine spirit. They were led on by sin, a voice disguised as a Lord, brought to coat their temptation and theft in divine holy callings, when in reality God gives grace to the poor, to give them faith and existence. In almost all religions, faith is for the suffering, to give them pause that their pain is not in vain, that the forces of good are preserved by humankind and that there is a reason to exist, and evil is an external force which drives us down to misery. It also comes from the powerful convincing the people they abuse to, keep doing their busy work. But, I'm not surprised that the selfish serpent kings of mythology are only met with emptiness and narcissism as their surroundings are morphed by fear and hatred rather than divine acceptance brought by the suffering.
This the darkest that I ever been.
Malice here dwells in their worst thoughts and exhales them like a spirit. Where a rich thief would merely bury and suppress their guilt and insecurity, a man under God would recognize their existence as sin, guided by a Lord. They repent, rather than pulled forward by a lure of Satan. I do at least like that all three of these guys are on the song, since, that's kind of cool. Which brings us to the feature.
I'm not the candidate to vibe with.
It is so interesting that even though the feud from last year is long over, Kendrick will never escape the shadow of himself. It's funny because when that piece of shit music came out, the Playboi Carti one, the only thing people talked about was, "Gee, Kendrick, I thought you hated Drake. Why are you working with Future and Playboi Carti?" You know, because that's what he cared about. Also, I think it's fitting that music was so dog shit that the only thing people wanted to talk about was Kendrick. This year is so much trash just like it. I don't even think that god-awful album is in the bottom 5. I do not want to do the worst list, guys. Kendrick recorded this verse around the same time he did the Future and the other guy feature where he said, "Motherfucker, it's just big me, exploited bum." Which is to say that in the same way that Pusha T loudly confronted and angrily sneered at Drake kind of overshadowed the rest of the song, that subtext overshadows this verse. Honestly, I like Malice and Pusha T's verses more. I even like the chorus and post-chorus implication more. I do appreciate that Kendrick keeps the religious commentary. I also really like the Rakim bar here.
Let's be clear, hip-hop died again. Half of my profits may go to Rakim.
Both to lean into the "I won't hoard my wealth because I care about the culture" and dropping the reference to Rakim. I learned how to spell their name today. A proper old-school rapper who brought hip-hop to the form that Kendrick, Pusha, and Malice all lived through, all benefit off of. And Pharrell too, sure. Though Kendrick's commentary is more on the betrayal of Jesus Christ.
How many Judases that let me down?
Which isn't quite the same depth as the temptation of sin and wealth, but I get what it's getting at. Though it does make him super egotistical. Even then, I can't completely disregard this verse.
Therapy showed me how to open up. It also showed me how I don't give a fuck.
That realization that in order to be more open with yourself, you do still have to close yourself off to the wrong people. To learn that not everybody is worth your attention. That some people aren't even Judas or the disciples, but still show up to the executions.
Gentlemen and gangsters connect. The agenda her mind. Move niggas up out of here. This shit get gentrified.
That the cycle of bringing people down on the route out only leads to those people losing what brought them connection to their people. It leads better into that motif of temptation, but also shows a more complicated look at the problem. Here's Kendrick's best line.
Show up at your gender reveal and tell them give me mine. I son niggas, I am the general. I generate residuals, bitch. Get off my genitals. They say I couldn't reach Gen Z. You fucking dickhead.
While I don't love how hyper-centered it gets, I love this line because it's the exact opposite of the hatred in Pusha's and Malice's verses. In the same way, Pusha and Malice seem like vindictive spirits watching this person fall into their doomed arc through some Faustian bargain, selling their soul to the devil for rock and roll. Kendrick sounds like the opposite end of that. I didn't sell out to the world. I didn't take the temptation, and look what I did instead of wallowing in my successes in your chains and whips. The title track is about the servitude of being defined by the rags the riches come up. In being defined by luxuries given to you to perform your diversion to subversion and servitude, but you're still under the hand of the capitalist that owns you, your music, your brand, and the companies you're embroiled in. And when the time comes, you keep your mouth shut.
Here comes the jinx, yeah. They genetics been synthetic, screaming they genius. A finger wave, they all fall. Niggas is Jenga. Trunk card, tell me not to spare your life. Motherfucker.
That in his light, in his grace of self-reflection, in bowing to his Ba, he doesn't watch his own ambitions limit his reach. He doesn't fall into the hand which controls his puppet strings because he isn't beholden to the culture that attempts to control him. That he doesn't collapse as soon as his shaky foundation is plucked apart. And at the end, he still says your time is up, and I'm the Grim Reaper for your soul. I want to linger on that motherfucker because he mumbles it. There's this other song that Kendrick is also on, but the verse ends with Earl Sweatshirt. He raps to this dead weight that hasn't changed and kinda stayed a bum, and ends with this echoing
motherfucker, fucker.
It ends the song, and in my opinion, his verse is the best of the four.
You've been the same motherfucker since 2001.
And I cannot get over how fucking creepy Kendrick's threat is at the end. Both songs are about confrontation to the people who just won't change, but Kendrick's verse ends like a train plowing over a body. At the end, Pharrell recites the call from above. The Faustian bargain requires the other end to be paid off. It's not the Lord who led you. This song was the one to really stand out to me, mostly from how insane it sounds and the fact, well, Kendrick was on it, so it charted higher. Because people tend to like the things he is on. And for no other reason. Chains and Whips is a great song. It's groovy and catchy, it's got excellent writing and themes, it makes a great video essay. And that said, I think there's another piece to this whole spiel that I didn't even mention. This is an experimental hip-hop album, no strings attached, that sounds like this.
When I was born, grandmama could see it.
That is written about the salivating desire to see people fall due to their side of the deal, their hubris, due to their arrogance and ego. Fuck this empathy shit. They need to die. This was one of the biggest hip-hop songs of the year. I remember how much hype was behind it. Sure, it was cool Chromacopia got as popular as it did, but that's Tyler, the Creator. He's been doing weird shit since Bastard. This is a legacy act from the Bling era, one I am not familiar with, returning with a strange album about death and downfall, about the lure of wealth calling at the cost of one's community and humanity, that sounds like it came out of a cursed tomb, where the 4 rappers play as horsemen reaping the souls of the damned, acting as gargoyles watching someone crumble and crater under their own hubristic temptations again and again. Like a Greek chorus singing about the tragedy, finally seeing them fall from their lack of foundation. That blows my mind. I was hoping to finally make a non-30-minute video, but I guess the best songs of this year require full lecture-style breakdowns, and I think this song needs it. More importantly, this song is fucking scary. Would you want these people watching your downfall with gleefully salivating smiles as the Lord persecutes this soul to irredeemable damnation? Would you want these vultures sucking at your soul? No. This song is terrifying. The video is strange. It's filled with minor key woodwinds and death rattles. The bass beats are brutal and unforgiving. The rapping is filled with religious metaphors and motifs of the failure of the Bling era's culture. In confronting the very ideal of Bling era hip-hop, creating a song that is ultimately about the narrator confronting you about your desire for money and power without any desire to help anyone else who needs it. It's a song about hatred, but hatred for the invincible who hoard power at the expense of everyone else as it converts them into soulless ghouls haunting their own old selves. I struggle with which amazing hip-hop track is the best of the year. Mirror Shades, this, or Blood by Little Sims. This is definitely high up there. I still have quite a few albums to go through though, so we'll see. Happy Hallows Eve, everyone. Cthulu Spider. Hold on to your soul, don't sell it to no one, otherwise the right spirits will come to reap their reward for your sins. Boo! Yeah.